So for the past 3 weekends, we've been in this series that we've called Colors of Hope. And what we've been seeing is that God has an incredible use for the pain in your life. He uses it as a canvas in which He can paint with colors of hope on the canvas of pain in our lives. And so we've seen throughout this series, through this man in the book of Mark, chapter 5, how God worked through his pain and worked through just to paint colors of hope all over his life. We also saw in the real life story last weekend as well, right in front of us, that Josh and Katie Walters, did they not do a great job offering hope to marriages, hope to everybody who walked in? That was a pitiful ovation for them. I will not pass that on to them. Y'all can do better than that. All right. So if y'all clap like for me like that when I'm gone, I'm going to be sad. I'm just going to tell you. It's going to depress me. But they did a great job. They came and offered hope to us and just saw that it's our pain that is a great professor in our life. Have you guys noticed that? If we'll allow it to teach us, there is a great lesson that we can learn, and it prepares you for your purpose. Because all of us have a purpose, and it's oftentimes when we walk through the pain in our lives that we begin to see that purpose and know that the pain has been a professor that has taught me something. Now, some people say, and I've heard a lot of people say this, I keep going through the same thing over and over again, the same pain. I just keep learning the same lesson over and over again. You know what we learned in elementary school is you only have to repeat the grade if you don't pass the test, right? So for some of you, it's maybe to go, hey, am I learning from this pain? Am I allowing it to be the professor in my life and to teach me? Or am I going around and around again because I'm just not learning? And so it's something to look at. And then also it prepares you for your purpose. We all have a purpose. God wants to use us in great ways and do great things from us. And oftentimes our greatest purpose comes out of being able to look at someone and say, I've been there. I've been through that. I've done that. And them being able to look at us and say, you too? You've gone through that as well. And so we allow our pain to be a great professor in our purpose. The other thing we've seen so far in this series is that it's about posture. It's about posture. We've seen all throughout, as we've looked at those who expect great things from God, that they get into a place of receiving, a posture of receiving, a posture where they're asking Jesus to come and to do something great in their lives. And so this posture is something we have. And we saw that within that posture, we begin to see that Jesus has the power over whatever. I mean, there was some strange stuff in Mark chapter 5 that Jesus had power over, some things that we don't quite understand. And we also saw that Jesus has the right to do whatever. So within our lives, often we'll say, I don't know if He can do anything in my life. I don't know if He can work this out in my life. He has the power to do whatever it is you're throwing at Him. But He also has the right to do whatever. He can go into your life and do things that He feels like is the best because He has a plan for your life, and He's painting with colors of hope. And so this weekend, I hope you've come in with a posture of receiving. I hope you're expecting something to happen as we continue in Mark chapter 5. If you turn there, Mark chapter 5, it's a chapter that we've been looking at. We'll start in verse 21. If you don't have your Bibles with you, they'll be on the side screen as well. Mark chapter 5, verse 21, it continues. It says, and Jesus got into the boat again, and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around Him on the shore. Now, you may remember that this whole story started when Jesus decided to take the disciples from the place that they were, and He took them over to the other side. You remember that? And they came over here to the other side. And they were over there. And so they got there, and then Jesus taught them a lesson. And the Gerasenes is the name of the place they went to, this region. They went to this dead place, this cemetery, and there was this man there. Do you remember? And he was one that had been cast away. He'd been pushed aside. And so they went over there. Jesus taught them the lesson that we've learned so far in this series. And now it says they've gotten back into the boat, and they've gone back over to point A again. So they started in point A. They went over to point B where Jesus taught them a lesson, and now they're back where we started. One of the things that we can learn from this whole chapter is that oftentimes the journey that we're taking in life is not about the journey, it's about the destination. And so it's not about destination, rather it's about the journey. Got those reversed. And that Jesus took them to this place just to teach them a lesson. And now they're back where they started. So we started off over here. Jesus has them back there again. But we just need to log that for ourselves. Oftentimes, what you're going through is not about where God's taking you. It's about what He's trying to teach you. And so you're going through some stuff right now, many of you, that God is trying to teach you something. He's trying to show you something about Himself. He's trying to show you something about you. He's trying to develop you. He's trying to grow you into who He wants you to be. And so that's what the disciples saw happen. But continuing in the story, verse 22, then a leader of the synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. And so as you can imagine, remember early in Mark chapter 5, Jesus goes to the Gerasenes and he heals this man who has been cast away from society because of the demonic influence on his life and the mental instability that he has because of that. He hurt himself and he hurt others. And so they chained him up and they took him to the graveyard. He was in the place of the dead. And so he's there. And then Jesus cast out the demons in him, the spirits, and then he puts them into these pigs who run off the side of this cliff. And so, as you can imagine, the word is starting to there's a buzz that's going on. Like this, what is this guy Jesus doing? He healed this guy. And the pigs went off the side of the cliff. And so people are beginning to talk. And well, it gets back, this story of this man gets back to Jairus. And Jairus is there and he hears about it. And so he's saying, hey, I've got something I need too from Jesus. And I heard that Jesus healed this man in the Gerasenes. And I heard that he gave him new life. And the Bible says that he was clothed and that he was sane again. And so Jairus goes, I've got a story too. I've heard his story, but I have a story as well. And so he goes to Jesus with this story. And then it says, when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. Posture again. This posture of coming to Jesus and receiving, ready to receive. It's a symbol of worship to fall to your knees. It's a falling at Jesus' feet to say, I need something from you and you're bigger than me and I worship you. It's a symbol of surrender, saying, I surrender to who you are and what you are. And so he comes and he falls, a posture ready to receive. And he pleading fervently with him. He says, my little daughter is dying. He said, please come and lay your hands on her and heal her so that she can live. This man has a story. He's got something going on in his life. The man in the dead place had a story. There's something going on in his life. There's a canvas of pain. Jairus has a canvas of pain that has been developed by his sickness of his daughter, and he sees her impending death. You have a story. Every single one of you came here today with a story. And it's a story of sometimes of enjoy. Enjoy your story is built sometimes. Sometimes it's a story of pain. Sometimes it's a story of purpose. Sometimes it's a story of wandering. Sometimes it's a story of actually being found. But you have a story. If we could sit down and individually talk, we would talk about your story. You could tell me where you're at right now in your story. Where Jairus was at a place of pain. He was at a place where he needed Jesus to do something. And so Jesus went with him. Jairus says, come with me to see my daughter. Jesus goes with him. And all the people followed, crowding around him. So once again, Jesus has gathered this crowd that's around him. And they're all pushing in to see him. And they're all just kind of up in his chili. They're just everywhere around him. But he's following with Jairus and he's going. And the crowd is there. They're pushing. They're walking beside him. They're trying to get the best view of what's happening and to see what Jesus is going to do next. I mean, he changed this man's life in the Gerasenes. He cast these demons into a pig, and they went over the side of a cliff. What's he going to do next? I mean, what's going to happen? Let's get a seat to see what's going to happen. And then it says in verse 25, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. So she'd been sick, and she had suffered a great deal from many doctors. And over the years, she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. There's a woman, she's got a story. It's a story 12 years in the making. She's been battling through this She's gone to every doctor. She's spent all of her money on it. She's gotten every test they can run on her. She's tried to see everything. And the reason why is because she's highly motivated, because her life has been affected by her story. Her life has been changed by her story. In fact, the religious laws of that day would have said that this woman, because of her bleeding, because of the issues that she had, was unclean. She had been unclean religiously, ceremonially, for 12 years. Does that mean she just can't go to church? Oh, no. It means a lot more than that. It means that she can't touch anyone, and no one can touch her. For 12 years, she had not felt the simple touch of someone. For 12 years, she couldn't get close to anyone, because if she did, they would cry out, "Unclean, unclean. This woman's unclean." No one wanted to accidentally rub shoulders with her. No one wanted her to be in a crowd with them. So I imagine she had put on a lot of extra clothing that day. She had covered her face well. She had wrapped up well. She was moving through the crowd slowly as to not draw any attention to herself, because her story preceded her. Her reputation preceded her. But she knew she needed to get close to Jesus. And so she's working her way through the crowd. She needs the touch of Jesus. She's heard that stories are being impacted by Jesus. She's heard that Jesus is showing up in people's lives. And then in verse 27, it says she had heard about Jesus. So she came up from behind. She heard about Jesus. There are some of you here who you've heard about Jesus. She heard about Jesus because of the stories that were going on about him. And he was healing people, and he was performing miracles. She'd heard about Jesus. Some of you heard about Jesus. There's a neighbor who invited you, and you've seen life change in their lives. They're talking about what Jesus is doing in their lives for the first time in a long time, or maybe ever. You've heard about Jesus because there's marriages that you're aware of that weren't doing well, but now they're doing better. God's beginning to work inside them. You heard about Jesus because you've seen a new attitude in people's lives. You've heard about Jesus. She heard about Jesus. And it says, so she came up behind him. I love this woman. She came from behind. Have you guys ever been pulling for a sports team and they get behind early all the time? You know, they just can't play in the first half for some reason. It feels like they're always playing from behind. And you're just always going, come on. We're always coming from behind. We're always having to come up from behind. Maybe you've been a part of another team at work. You feel like it's always from behind. We get the deadline too late. We get the project too late. We're always having to come up from behind. We're always having to claw ourselves out of a pit. You feel like in your life sometimes there's just seasons where you've been there, and it's just always coming from behind. Always trying to get your head above water just a little bit. You hear people talking about thriving, and you're talking about, I just want to survive. I'm coming from behind in my checkbook. I'm coming from behind in trying just to get caught up in life. Somebody here would say, I'm just coming from behind trying to get caught up on laundry. Do I got any amens? I mean, you're just like, I just can't get it all done. We got 4 kids in our house right now, 2 adults. I told everybody the other day, I said, no more wearing clothes. Got to wear them 3 times. Laundry's ridiculous, and I don't even do it. I don't even do any of it. It's just ridiculous how much laundry. But you're coming from behind. She's coming from behind. She decides that this is going to be the day of the catch-up. She's tired of coming from behind. She's tired for 12 years of being unclean. She's tired of not being just able to touch someone's hand. She's tired of it. And she says, today's going to be the catch-up. And I believe for some of you, 2016 is going to be the year of the catch-up. You're tired of coming from behind. You're tired of, and the Bible tells you you're the head, not the tail. You're high, you're not low. And so you say, I'm not going to come from behind anymore. That's not my position as an heir of Christ. That's not my position as a part of the kingdom of God. I don't have to take a lowly position and say I'm going to come from behind. I'm going to come from the head. I'm going to come from the front. And this lady decided, she said, I'm coming. I may be coming from behind, but I'm coming. So she comes from behind. Touch your neighbor and tell him it's the year of the catch-up while I find my place in my notes. We really do touch your neighbor, too. About 7 of you did it. Touch your neighbor. Touch them. Touch them. Some of you got your hand sanitizer in your pocket. Take it out. Clean it off. I know. She had heard about Jesus, so she came from behind him through the crowd. And listen, she touched the border of his garment, for she thought to herself, our thoughts are so important. As a man thinketh, so his life will be, the scripture tells us. What you think on, what you see, what you pray, as you see what you pray, God uses our thoughts. It says, she thought to herself, if I can just touch the hem of his robe, I will be healed. See, the hem of his robe would have been something that was down here. And what I notice about this woman is even in her faith, she knew, I'm going to be at my lowest. In order to get to him, I'm going to have to be down at my lowest. I'm going to be at the lowest point I've ever been in my marriage. I'm going to be at the lowest position that I've ever been in my spiritual life. I'm going to be down low. But if I can just touch the hem of that which drags his feet, if I can just reach out and touch the hem of his garment, I know that he will heal me. I know that he can do a great thing for me. Even when we're at our lowest, Jesus has made it possible for us to get a touch from him and to find him. The other thing I thought about this, I thought, well, how does she know which one's Jesus? I mean, this is a big crowd. There's people bumping everybody. There's people moving. There's hems of robes all over the place. So I did a little research into it. The hem of the robe would have also had a marking in it. It was sort of like, here's what I'd say. Even in that time, mamas wrote the initials on their kids' underwear, all right? Because that's what it was. And so there was this identifier, a marking of the family that would be on the hem of his robe. And so she knew there's power in the identity of Jesus. There's power in the name of Jesus. There's something about just the fact that that hem of his robe identifies who he is. If I can get down, I'm coming from behind, and I'm going to be in the lowest spot I've ever been in my life. But if I can just touch his identity, his name, then I know that something will happen. She had the faith to believe it. She decided it was going to be the day of the catch-up. She wasn't coming from behind anymore. In verse 29, it says immediately, touch your neighbor and tell him, immediately. Touch your other neighbor and tell him, I chose you second, but still, immediately. I love the word immediately here. And it doesn't always happen immediately. It doesn't always, your life doesn't always change in a moment completely. Your circumstances don't always just completely go away in a moment. In other words, the exterior doesn't always change. But something inside of her, immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Immediately something happens on the inside. Immediately, the power came into her body. And then it says in verse 30, Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? Who touched me? Hey, somebody just touched me. Who did it? Who touched me? Somebody touched me. And his disciples said to him, I love this, they said, look, had this crowd pressing around you, Jesus. How can you ask who touched me? In other words, they're like, Jesus, there are people everywhere. All right, we are intimately close to everyone right now. They are pushing in. They are pressing in. Jesus, touch your neighbor is out of control. I mean, it's just everybody is touching their neighbor. And you are sitting here asking who touched you. How can you ask who touched you, Jesus? And then he says, no, someone touched me. Someone touched me. Look at this. Everyone was bumping into Jesus. Everyone was reaching out to get close to him. Everyone was kind of peering over the crowd, bumping into somebody else who bumped into Jesus. There was a crowd, it says, pressing in on him. But only one had the expectation that that touch would heal her. Only one really touched him. There were lots of people getting close to Jesus, but only one whose expectations took her to a place that she knew that a touch from him would be real. Lots of people were bumping into Jesus. Lots of people were right up beside Jesus. Lots of people have been there a long time. But it was her who reached out from her lowest place and just touched the hem of his garment that a real touch began to happen. And what we see here is God will meet you at the level of your expectations. She believed that a touch from Jesus would do something. She believed that healing would come from that touch. But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. And then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him. There's that posture again. She fell to her knees. But I want you to see something else too. She was coming from behind. She reached out at her lowest place. She touched him in the hem of his garment, knowing that he could change. Immediately, something happened inside of her. Once what happened inside of her came to being, she's no longer behind him. It says she fell on her knees in front of him. She's now caught up. She's now in a place of worship. She was in a place of reaching out for Jesus. Now she's in a place of worship, saying, I surrender. I'm in a posture of receiving. I'm in a posture of saying, I want to look you in the eyes. She knew before, I don't even have to look him in the eyes. I just need to touch the hem of his garment. Now she's in a place where she can look him right into the eyes. And she told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, I love that he addresses her now in her position. Her expectancy put her into a place of position that gave her a new purpose for her life. She's got a brand new name now, daughter, he says. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. Your suffering is over. I feel like there's people here who need to hear this. When you've allowed Jesus to save you, you're now in a new position. You're no longer coming from behind. You're in front. And in that position, you now have the position of daughter and son of the King. And when you have that position, regardless of what is going on around you, the suffering is over. Regardless of what is going to happen externally in your life, the suffering is over. You have a newfound position, and that position overrides all of the pain. See, the colors of hope, when they splash on our canvas of pain, they take away the white of the pain. They add the colors and the vibrancy and the beauty of what God wants to do in our lives. And right like now, she's in front of him. The suffering is over. And here's what I was thinking about this woman. In her culture, she was a nobody. In her culture, she was a woman, number one. Women were not highly esteemed in this culture. Women were treated poorly in this culture. They were certainly given no rights. They were certainly given no position. And she's already starting there, and then she's a woman who is sick. And she's sick in such a way that all of her religious friends, all of her culture pushes her away even more. And so she's a nobody in the purest form that she could be culturally in that day. But she decided to be a someone on the way. She's just walking through life. She's just journeying through her pain. She's just going through life. And she decided, I'm going to be a someone on the way to wherever I'm going. And the way I'm going to be a someone is I'm going to find somebody who I know if I can just reach out to him, he will change me. And she decided that day she wasn't going to be a nobody anymore. She wasn't going to be a no one anymore. She was going to find a new position. And that position only came through Jesus. So it says there, I'm going to be touched by this man. I'm going to be healed. And she did it. She knew if she could just touch him, it would change her life. In verse 35, while he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus. Remember, this story started with Jairus coming and saying, Jesus, I need your touch. Jesus is walking through the crowd with this grieving man who's about to lose his daughter. And all of a sudden, this commotion breaks out. Touch your neighbor goes wild. This woman reaches out. She's taking the spotlight for just a moment. We begin to believe this story is about her. But remember, this story was about Jairus. And so Jairus is there. And while he was speaking to her, the messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. And they told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. Some of you have had that spoken over you. Your life is dead. You made that choice. You made that mistake. It's dead now. You can't get a start over. You made that choice. Some of you, maybe you've spoken it over yourself. Your own marriage. My marriage is dead. You tell your friends privately, I mean, we live together, but we're just roommates. It's just dead. It's dead. You feel like your life is dead. And just like the man at the beginning of this chapter is in a dead place. But here's what we learn. But Jesus overheard them, and he said to Jairus, don't be afraid. Now listen, just have faith. Just have faith. Look at the succession of this whole deal. Jesus is with his disciples. He says, I got to teach them something. He takes them on a boat across in a storm. It gets crazy in the storm. Why? Because he needs to strengthen their faith. He gets them over to the other side. They find this man who's in a dead place. Jesus tells them, this is what can happen. This is the hope that can come in people's lives. This is the healing that can come in people's lives. Their faith is strengthened. He goes back over to the other side. Jairus comes. Jairus says, I need you to heal my little girl. I need you to do this miracle in my life. And Jesus says, all right, let's go along. But he knew Jairus needed something. Jairus still needed a little encouragement. This woman comes. She touches Jesus, the hem of his garment. And Jesus says to her, you were healed because of your faith. Because of your faith. And now the report of the crowd comes. Your daughter's dead. Don't worry about it, Jairus. You don't need to even bother the teacher anymore. Jesus looks Jairus in the eyes and he says, just have faith. I showed you the faith of this woman can do amazing things. I showed you the faith of my disciples as they went with me and trusted me, got them to be able to see this man to be healed and all of the hope that came into her life. You heard about that. That's why you came. Now just have faith. He's strengthening his faith. He's strengthening his faith. And now they're going along. What we see is, don't listen to the report of the crowd. Don't listen to those who think they know what's going on. You listen to the promises of God. If God said it's going to be different than the crowd, it's going to be different. The natural may even say, this can't happen. That's why we serve a supernatural God. You may say, but that's just not what ordinarily happens. That's why we look for the extraordinary. So Jesus says, Jairus, just have faith. Just have faith. And then Jesus, listen, he stops the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except for Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jairus, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. They were mourning the loss of this little girl. Put yourself into their shoes. This little girl has died. And he went inside and he asked the people, why all this commotion and weeping? He says, what's your story? What's going on? He says, the child isn't dead. She's only asleep. Jesus reframes their reality. He says, no, what you're seeing is not what's really happening. Let me tell you what's really happening. She's not dead. She's asleep. And the crowd laughed at him. But he made them all leave. So now he takes the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha Koum, which means, little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, this woman had been dealing with this sickness for 12 years. This little girl had life breathed into her 12 years ago. Jesus says, put this all together. I am a life-giving God. 12 years, 12, the number of power. in the Bible. He says, I have the power to defeat sickness. I have the power to defeat death. I can do whatever, and I can do it whenever, and by the power of however I want to. And immediately, there's that immediately again, she stood up and she walked around. And they were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Now, I don't know if this is true. This is a pastoral conjecture, but sometimes we have to use some of that to put all the pieces together. But I was reading this story, and here's what I saw. Jesus stopped the first crowd from coming. Remember, there was a crowd all gathered around Jesus when the woman with the issue of blood was healed. And here's what we know about that crowd. None of them had the faith that this woman had to believe. Don't you imagine that in that crowd, there was someone who needed a touch from Jesus? There was someone who needed a healing in their life. There was someone who needed something greater, but none of them had it. And Jesus says to them, he says, Peter, James, and John, you come with me. Remember, Peter, James, and John had already gone in the boat. They had shown Jesus something in the boat that he liked. He says, Peter, James, and John, you come with me. He says, let's go with Jairus. Jairus and Peter, James, and John walk to Jairus' house. They get there. There's another crowd. This crowd is weeping and they're mourning, and Jesus says, I'm here to comfort you. I'm here to do exactly what you need. This little girl's not sleeping. I'm going to reframe everything for you. A miracle is getting ready to happen. And what did they do? They laughed. They laughed. And what did Jesus do? He said, out with you. Go out. Go out. So then he takes the little girl's mother. He takes Jairus. He takes Peter, he takes James, he takes John himself, the six of them joining this little girl. Now there's 7 in the room when Jesus says, get up, little girl. I was thinking about that. The first crowd didn't have the faith. They didn't expect anything to happen. I don't know, maybe they showed up just to see who this Jesus was. Maybe they showed up because it was a religious meeting and that's what religious people do. Maybe they showed up and they kind of thought something was going on, but they didn't really believe anything could happen. And so Jesus says, you don't get to go to the next thing. He goes with Peter, James, and John. This crowd's there and they don't believe. They have no faith. And Jesus says, you don't get to go to the next stage. And here's what we see. Your expectancy is your ticket to see the extraordinary. The 7 got to see a little girl who was dead on a table rise up off of the table and walk around out there. All the people on the outside got to see was her walk out. But the ones who got to go inside, who got the front row seat, they got to see an amazing miracle of God. And I wonder sometimes if we don't show up for church and we don't expect anything to happen. We come in, our marriage is in ruins, but we don't expect God to do anything in it. We already got the divorce papers ready. We don't expect God to move in us in a way that would do something different in our lives. We don't expect to go to a small group and actually have people that we can look at and share with and they can walk us through. We don't expect God. I think about Acts chapter 12. I was reading this the other night with my little girl. We're reading this story. It's about Peter, and Peter is in jail. He gets put in jail, and he's escaped from prison before, so they don't like him, escaping and all that kind of stuff. So they put one guard over here, and they kind of handcuff him to that guard. They put another guard over here. They kind of handcuff him to that guard, and he's there, and they're like, you're not getting out this time. You're not getting out. Well, all the disciples are back in the upper room, and they're over there. They're praying, Lord, please get Peter out of prison. God, be with Peter. Get him out of prison. God, move in Peter's life. Get him out of prison. Oh, Lord, get him out of prison. Let me see who's at the door. I'll be right back. Let me see. Goes over. Who's there? It's Peter. You're in prison. It's not Peter. Let me go ask these guys. Hey, somebody's at the door. I'm not opening the door. They say they're Peter. It can't be Peter. He's in prison. How could Peter be here? He's in prison. Let's get back to our prayer meeting. Oh, Lord, get Peter out of prison. Help him get out of prison, God. Help him. Let me go see who this is. I'm going to put an end to this. Who is it? It's Peter. What? It says it's Peter again. Keep praying. Lord, help Peter. Lord, help Peter. Help Peter. It's Peter. It's Peter. How many of you have ever been there? Lord, help my marriage. God, please heal my marriage. At work, I mean, we're never going to get straight. It's never. I mean, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know how to treat me. He doesn't know how to treat anybody. I'm going to get me a new man. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, God, help my marriage. Help it. God, help my children. Lord, help them come to Jesus. Help them, help them, help them. And then you're screaming at them. You're not showing them anything about Jesus. You're just talking to them, and they're never going to get straight. And then you got a friend. Oh, God, help this friend come to you, God. Help them come to you. I know that you can do something, God, in their lives. Then you're talking to your other friend. They're never going to get their life straight. They always make bad choices. They're never going to do anything. Our level of expectancy gives us a chance to get to a place where extraordinary things are done. And when we don't expect anything to happen, we get exactly what we expect. How many of you are ready to have some expectancy in your life? You're ready to say, God, I'm going to pray prayers that I actually believe. I'm going to pray for Peter to get out of prison, and when the knock comes at the door, I'm going to go, it must be Peter. It's got to be Peter, because that's what we were praying for. When my friend comes to church, I'm going to go, today's the day they go get saved. Some of you were invited today. You know why you were invited? Because your friend thinks you're lost as last year's Easter egg, right? And they're expecting you to hear something from God today. They loved you enough to hear from God today. Some of us are praying prayers like we are practical atheists. I mean, we pray because we're supposed to, but we don't believe it. And when the knock, it's the Holy Spirit, I'm here to fix your marriage. My marriage can't be fixed. Hey, if you'll just invite that neighbor, I bet they'll come to church. They'll never come to church. They hate church. Hey, I want to do something big in your life. I've got plans for you to do exceedingly abundantly more than you could ever ask or imagine. Nah, I've got dreams that have died. I can't think of anything that's going on. You can't be really there. Can't be really there. Our expectancy. The crowds, the other disciples even, would simply have to see the result of the miracle. But Jesus allows some of them to have a front row seat. And here's what I've decided in my life. I may not get a good show, but I'm going to sit on the front row the whole time because something might happen. I don't sit in the back because in the back, nothing's going to happen. I'm going to sit on the front and go, let's just see what can happen. Something might happen. It might be a good show. And if it's going to be a good show, I want to see what God is going to do. And so you got to ask yourself, how about you? Are you like the woman? You ready to become a someone because of your faith? You're tired of it? You're tired of just accepting the fact that your marriage is broken. You're tired of accepting the fact that you're broke. You're tired of accepting the fact that you're sick. You're tired of accepting the fact that you just can't get ahead in life. You're tired of being behind, and you want to be the head and not the tail. You want to be in a position that's in front saying, I am a daughter and I am a son of the King. And that's where I want to be. And I'm going to reach out and touch Jesus, and we'll see what happens. See what happens. Are you like the Father? Some of you in here, you have friends and you have family who are spiritually sick, and they need somebody with the tenacity to show up on the scene and say, Jesus, come with me. Jairus had the faith, he had the tenacity, he had the guts to somehow convince Jesus to walk with him. Because there's a crowd all around him, but he's walking with Jairus. All right, let's go. Let's go to your house. How many of you are going to be that for somebody else in your life? You say, I'm going to pray prayers about that I believe. I'm going to have tenacity in my life. I'm willing to chase down the miracle. And then we're going to be like Peter and James and John, where we've proven over a track record that we have faith. Just a few chapters later, if you read the book of Mark, Peter, James, and John are the ones that are taken up onto a high mountain where the transfiguration happens. In other words, they see the presence of God. They earned with faith the ticket to see the extraordinary. And I want to experience the power and the presence of God. I want to come to church expecting God to move. I want to come with a spirit of posture of receiving. And I hope we'll be a church that's marked by that. In Jesus' name, let's pray. God, thank you for this story. Thank you for all that you do, how you move in our lives. God, we're grateful for the story of this man in Mark chapter 5 that teaches us that it's never too late. That God, you always have hope available to us. God, we thank you for the story of this woman who shows us that no matter how long it's been, how hard it's been, how cast away you feel, that with a simple touch of a Savior, your life can be changed immediately. We thank you for the story of Jairus, who shows us that when we love someone so much, we won't let them just die. That God, we pray for a resurrection in their lives. We find the resurrection. The resurrection was a man, not an event. We find the resurrection, and we take the resurrection to the dead places in their lives. God, give us that tenacity. Give us those guts. God, I thank you for our response time, that you'll move through us and among us, and allow us to be touched by the Holy Spirit who we have welcomed here. In Jesus' name, amen.